What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm here with the 2025 Honda CBR1000RR-R Fireblade SP. Now to say that of course is a mouthful, but the bike is actually a handful. Now this is a revised model from the 21 through 24. The 25 gets a few different things. While we still have the same 214 horsepower and 83 wheel torque, or 83 torque, that they're claiming in Europe, there's no power bump, but we're getting this power about 500 RPM earlier at 14,000 instead of 14.5. There have also been quite a few changes to the motor. We've got a 13.4 to 1 compression rate ratio in the 20 through 24, and we have 13.6 in the new model here, along with some new changes to the valve springs. We also have a lightened rotating assembly. The crank and con rods all have been lightened. Moving on to the transmission, we have shorter gear ratios, which was a major complaint for the 21 through 24. The bike would simply, its legs were far too long for what the motor could handle, basically, and everyone would change the gearing out to fix that. But now they've revised the transmission completely for shorter gearing. They revised the chassis to be a little bit lighter and less rigid, so you get more ride feeling through turns. They've even put these new revised wings on the bike, and the wings give you a 10% better yaw feel, I guess. So that means when you're turning, the bike's supposed to feel more lively while you're turning, or more lighter while you're turning. The livery is like the same as a 21 through 24. I know we had that white one or whatever. We've got this one in red here for the HRC. It looks pretty cool, but it looks just like the old model with the exception of the wings. It almost reminds me of the M1000RR in 2021 versus the S1000RR. Very minor changes that you can tell if you're an enthusiast, but for the casual rider looking at it, looks like the same bike from 21 onward. Now for all that reduction in weight that we're seeing on the bike, this bike still weighs 445 pounds, and the old bike, or the 21 through 24, weighed 443 from what I can see. So it gained about 2 pounds, and this is on the heavier end in my opinion for a sport bike at this point. We're dealing with low 400s for the other offerings. We're talking Ducati and BMW that come with these carbon wheels, whereas you're paying about 30,000. It's 28.9 I believe starting price on this bike, and it comes with cast wheels. Now it does come with Olin suspension and Brembo anchors, and both of those are very good, but the cast wheels is something I can't move past. Just put some forged wheels on this bike, or put some carbon wheels on this bike. Let's get it like the other leader bikes. Another thing, the electronics, in my opinion, just out of the box, you're looking at it, 5-inch TFT is a little behind on the times. BMW has already gone into that 6.5-inch TFT that was very smooth and beautiful back in 2019. And even Ducati, which had something similar to this, recently revised their design, the 25 V4, which we have coming soon here. And the options that come in the electronics themselves aren't extremely impressive. We got a lot more options from, like I said, Ducati and BMW. For $30,000, I expect to have throttle control, a few other things in the bike that I'm not seeing in the menus. We do have the P throttle, or the power modes here. We go 1 through 5. They kind of give you less and less power, but there's no way to really kind of exact that throttle, meaning it kind of feels like an on-off switch. That was one of the complaints I had with the 21 through 25, and it doesn't feel like that remedied it here, because it's barely twisting and it's just like on-off switch. You have to really kind of smoothly lay into the throttle. You guys have probably also noticed I've got a check engine light there. That's because I put the bike on a stand and there's a speed sensor error when that front tire is stopped and you start doing some shenanigans with the back tire. That will be cleared with the flash, so just keep watching it. Watch after I post a flash video, you'll see that will be gone. Now we have 100% stock CBR1000RR here. When I say stock, I mean it has the stock exhaust, stock everything with the stock tuning right now. And it's so quiet I can barely hear the clutch engagement. In fact, I can hear the howl of the transmission over the exhaust on the freeway, and then wind noise, and then maybe the exhaust if I really lay into it after about 7,000 or 8,000 RPM. It sounds like the valve opens up then. So this thing is quiet as a kitten. Let me give you guys a brief overview of what we're going to be doing with this bike. So first we test stock 100%. That means 100 miles stock, 100 miles flashed. I'll be testing everything on the motorcycle, stop and go, just like we're doing now. I'm gonna go to some top end stuff to feel what the top end feels like. We'll be doing GPS testing to see what it does 60 through 130, and then we're going to the dyno seeing what our tuning can do with this bike, along with testing prototype stacks and an air filter and even race gas. We're going to see what this bike can really do, and then after that we're going back on the road and testing all those variables the same way again to see if there's an improvement, not just in power but overall rideability, because we love to see big numbers on the dyno, but we also want to make sure for the casual or the person that's riding light to light that they're not dealing with an on-off switch for the throttle. The throttle transitions are good, the throttle response is good, the way it shifts is good, the engine fan coming on is good. So we alter a lot of parameters in the motorcycle, not just for power but for overall rideability, and that's why we're over here testing. So right now I'm testing just stop and go stuff and how it feels. Right now it feels much like the 2021 model I've tested in the past. The low throttle feels really doggy. There's no power in this thing whatsoever. Even on P1, which is the most power I can get, you can see across the board here, all power all the way. But there is no power in the down low in this bike, and that's kind of a normal thing for Honda. They don't really turn on until about 8,000, 9,000 RPM, and then it turns into like this crazy roller coaster of a bike. The quick shifter definitely has some delay in it. It feels a little bit clunky. Downshifts are very smooth though. Yeah, it's really doggy down low. I'm sure up top it gets faster and faster, but there's a noticeable delay when you're shifting at lower RPMs below that 5,000 marker when you're just stopping and going. This bike does run a little hot. It keeps around 200 degrees. The fan comes on and off. There's a very small window this engine fan comes on and off, and it just kind of constantly stays on. And I'm here and it's probably like 65 degrees here right now, and this engine fan just keeps on coming on. I can imagine on a hotter day just blowing hot air all over the entire time. We'll see if we can do something about that on the dyno. So overall, my stop and go impressions here, this is very quiet. It's okay. It's a little bit notchy and clunky down low. It's not where it's supposed to shine. This bike is made to be at 10,000 to 15,000 RPM. That's where this bike really comes alive, kind of like the V4R. This is like the V4R version for Honda right here. So I think we should go and take this thing to the top end stuff right now and see where this bike can shine and see how it feels with all the stock restrictions. I'm sure this bike is 100% restricted just like the prior model. We'll see how bad it is or how bad it feels back in that racing range where it's supposed to feel great. All right, we're at the top end stuff, so let's see what this bike can really do. Turn-ins are very nice. The anchors, these Brembos, these 4-piston Brembos are very, very nice. Great initial bite. Suspension's doing a pretty decent job too, especially for road surface that's not really that perfect. And the gearing is still pretty long for a bike like this. The downshifts are nice and crisp. The upshifts are actually not upsetting the balance of the bike whatsoever. The mid-corner exits actually tip in is great. Oh, lost a little traction right there. Bike actually feels pretty good bike feels pretty good in the upper RPM range. Let's feel some low end tip in. It still feels a little not very confidence inspiring. It's kind of on and off more than I'd like. Oh, but once it gets in it, it gets in it. Oh yeah, it definitely feels good. A lot of power when you're at a track setting. As long as you get up above like 5,000-6,000 RPMs, the bike turns on. Oh yeah, it's coming on. Is a monster. Even stock, it's a monster. This definitely feels a lot more powerful stock for stock than the 2021 does. My goodness. And the frame definitely feels a lot less rigid, more confidence inspiring through these turns. The power's still not great. It's not very predictable because it just kind of pours on. The exhaust valve, I can tell, is open now because I can actually hear the bike. So it seems like that's RPM based. Very decent piece of machinery. This thing is a weapon. I guarantee you it's a weapon at the track. All right, now that we got a good baseline here on what the top end of this bike can do, let's see what it does 60 through 130. All right, we're here getting the stock 60 to 130. You can see I have ones across the board here. That is the most power we can possibly put down on this bike. 6.3, 60 through 130 stock. Objectively speaking, isn't slow, but it is for a claimed 214 horsepower leader class super bike. And I'm going to attribute that to a couple things here. First of all, the gearing. The gearing is still in the sprockets. While they changed the transmission to be closer, we still need to put some sprockets on this thing to get this thing to the point where it's usable power. The gearing is so long right now, still, even as a revised version of the 21 through 24. Also, the restrictions. While the restrictions aren't as bad on this model, the 25, as the 21, they're still pretty bad. I mean, I'm getting no power down low. It feels like a dog down low. There's no sound in this bike whatsoever. All I can hear is the transmission howling, basically, unless I hit about 7,000 RPM. I mean, if you're cruising, you're nowhere near that RPM range. The shifter still feels clunky down low. There's like a hesitation down low. Up top, it feels decent. Down low, it's too clunky. The ergonomics of the bike, they claim they raised the bars up and dropped the rear set so you can get a more full or proper seating as a taller person. It still feels too crammed in this cockpit for me. Even the TFT is angled in a way where I have to kind of be in a racing position to see it properly. If I'm in a normal position like this, for example, part of the windscreen is covering the TFT for me as like I said, a 6'3" rider. I've got full power first gear here. I mean, I should be able to go first gear and should be able to whack it and then go straight up in the air. It goes up in the air, but only until I hit 10,000 RPM, and it feels lazy to that response. So that's one of the things we're going to look at the dyno, along with a litany of other things of why this bike has a small window for the cooling fans, how high it is. We're going to try to remedy that, as well as the tip-in, the throttle response. I'm going to go over a few things, even the exhaust valve. We're going to de-restrict that, make this bike sound better, because it just sounds so quiet right now. So let's go to the dyno and see what this thing can do. What's up, guys? I'm back here in San Diego. I have the 2025 CBR1000RR-R SP alphabet soup bike on the dyno. This is a 2025 model. We're gonna be testing our stock tuning. So stock number one, we're gonna see how it does bone stock. But also, I have a surprise for you guys. We're gonna be comparing prototype velocity stacks, also with an air filter, against the stock stuff with our tuning, and VP race fuel we're gonna be putting in here. So all of the testing as far as that goes, as well as comparing it against the 2021 RR that we had on the same exact dyno here. I have quite a large database of motorcycles now we can compare numbers to. So I think this is going to be a good test. Let's go ahead and test stock first, but I'm going to go ahead and tear this bike down to the point where I can just take the airbox off so I can swap parts in and out very fast. I don't have to worry about the bike cooling off too much or whatever, a hot run versus a cold run. So I like to tear this thing down, get it ready so I can just swap things in and out very fast. So let's go ahead and get this thing torn down to the stock box and then test stock tuning. All right, now that's partially torn down, let's do the stock runs. All right, stock tuning is done here. We're making a total of 179 wheel horsepower, which is actually significantly better than the 2021 model. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Now you can see the 2025 model here is in red and the 2021 model is here in blue. Both of them are stock ECU tuning. And you can see we're making a lot of power over that 2021. And one could also argue and say, hey, well, the 2021 was more restricted. Well, yes, it is. You're 100% right. So it's not really an apples to apples comparison, but also keep in mind this roller coaster of a graph is something a lot of people complained about with the model. So they did kind of smooth things out. This bike also had velocity stacks in it and a full exhaust system, the 2021 I'm referring to, not the 25. So not really an apples to apples comparison, but it is interesting to see stock versus stock. Now it's time to put the mod file in here and see how she does with the mod file versus that stock run. right, here's our stock run versus our mod run. You can see huge gain in power right here. I mean, we're talking almost 20, well, that is 20 wheel horsepower right there up top. And we start getting this real separation in power here at about 11,600 RPM. This is really the racing range of the motorcycle. We got this soft limiter here, and you could hear it on the dyno when I ran that stock run, that it's not even really hitting a RPM limiter. It just dies and dies and dies, and then eventually hits a hard limiter. The soft limiter is really killing the power out of this bike. And you can see just de-restricting it and getting proper fueling, proper ignition, we're making really good power at 196 versus that 179. Now let's go ahead and install velocity stacks and the air filter to see how we can compare against that 2021 model. All right, here are our stacks right here. And because the air box and the stacks changed on the 2025 model, we had to change our stacks. So this is a 1-of-1 right here. We're going to test these out today, find out exactly how much power these things make or lose over the stock stacks, and compare everything together. Now, of course, with the stacks, you want to make sure you have an air filter as well. Because we have a stack now that's requesting more air, we got to get more air to the bike itself. So you can see right here, it's definitely a filter that allows a lot more air through it than the stock paper filter does. So let's go ahead and get this in the bike along with the stack so we can see the gains. Now, if I wasn't going to be doing stacks and just do this air filter, there'd be little to no gain from the bike because these things are pretty maximized from the factory. But because we're doing stacks, I always recommend an air filter when you do stacks. Voila, there we are. Just kind of peels back the air box right there. So we got the stacks right here and we got the air filter. Let's go ahead and get these things swapped out. Right there, the throttle body's right there. You got all that foam beautifulness right there. Taking all that stuff out isn't gonna give you a huge gain, just to let you guys know, and it takes forever to take that foam out of there. And you can see these are our stock stacks, or sorry, aftermarket BT Moto stacks, 1-of-1 right here. And the the stock stacks right there, these are our stacks. You can see the height difference. There's really no height difference here on the two stacks. We found if you go too short with these velocity stacks, you lose a whole lot in like the 7 to 10 range on the RPM. However, if you match these, we gain up top and we barely lose anything in that mid-range by opening this thing up. So we're gonna see exactly how these compare, or at least in theory, that's how this works. So we're gonna see, and we'll show you guys exactly what we come up with here, but we think this is a winner. So we'll see right now. All right, we are all together here with the BT Moto Velocity Stacks, 1-of-1 set right here that I had to custom make myself to make them fit in this air box. And we also have the Sprint air filter right there. Let's see what this combo can do now with our flashing. And I should probably button this bike completely back up again. All right, here we are. This is the air filter and stacks, our prototype stacks that we've installed in. These stacks have paid off. You can see right here at about 12,700, we're really separating huge on this. And we're making a total of about 16 wheel horsepower just up top. Even though up here we're only making 5 peak to peak, which is still, if I told you 5 peak to peak on velocity stacks, you'd probably say, hey, that's great. And we're not really losing anything down low. That's where usually you're suffering or you're shifting the graph over, a lot of people say. We are seeing a little loss of power right here at about 10,000 RPM. That's the same thing that happened with the Triple R and the 21 through 24 models. We're used to seeing that. And then we're used to seeing this bump right here in power where it's just breathing so much better now. Let's go ahead and compare this to the 2021 now. Check this out. So we've got the 2021 in blue and the 2025 in red. About the same power, 201, right? But we're seeing blue making more power everywhere because it's a full system bike. It's got a full exhaust system on it. This is the red, you gotta consider it's a stock, fully stock exhaust system. In the mid-range there, that's usually where systems shine. And that's where it would pick up if we actually put an exhaust system on the 25. But you can see up top here, there was stock exhaust system because that 2021 had an Acura system, which I'll stake my life on the performance of an Acura. They are the best at doing what they do. They always make the best power numbers for bikes that I've seen. So it's no slight against Acura themselves. It just means this 25 is making some real steam through a stock system. I mean, that's crazy work right there. That is 3-wheel horsepower just up top there. It really starts separating out there about 13.2. Again, this is the full racing range here. This is where you want to see kind of more power.
Now let's go ahead and throw some race gas in here. I think the VP Racing Fuel is going to get us to about 210. If it does, I've never seen 210 through a stock exhaust system on a bike on this dyno. And it actually did it. 210 rear wheel horsepower, and that's through VP Racing Fuel, our velocity stacks, tuning, the Sprint air filter. That's what made this possible. This is crazy. Now let's go ahead and compare all of the graphs together so I can kind of give you a brief explanation of everything here. All right, this is it. Let me walk you guys through all the numbers here. 179, our orange run here is going to be completely stock 2025 RR. The green run is going to be stock with tuning. The blue run is going to be our tuning plus velocity stacks and air filter. And our 210 run, of course, is going to be all of that stuff plus the VP Racing Fuel. And you can see the stack runs versus non-stack runs, massive. It's massive. That's a huge gap right there where we're just getting to breathe. This bike just breathes so much better through that. Nice smooth curve here. We're seeing really good stuff at this. I mean, we're talking even insane torque. If we're even to compare the stock run here to Redline, let's see right here, at red, 196, which is hitting our hard limiter, basically, versus 80, it's over 100 wheel horsepower. That's over 100 wheel horsepower. Now, of course, that's a software limitation, but it is something you're gonna have to deal with if you have a stock bike and you don't have a flash on it. And even if you don't have a flash on it, and we're talking even the green run here, which is no velocity stacks, 174 versus 187, that's just tuning, and then 196 with that racing fuel. That's almost, well, that's over 20 wheel horsepower peak to peak right there. That's crazy. Amazing numbers here, and of course I'm going to go over with you guys exactly what we're going to do with the rest of the tuning. We got tip-in stuff we changed, we got throttle response we changed, we got the engine cooling fans we changed, the whole torque model's been revised and changed. This bike should feel a world different, not just in power, but also how it rides and just overall rideability, stop and go traffic, stuff like that. We're going to go over that right now in our post-ride review.
All right, post-flash review here. I've been riding the bike for about 50 miles on the freeway so far. Haven't really beat it up yet, but this bike is completely transformed. Not just in the top end, but we're also talking low to mid-range is what I'm really been testing here for the past 50 miles, and it's amazing compared to the stock stuff. I actually have power in the bike now. It's a ridiculous amount of power now. And it's on demand. So remember that low range that was so bad before? Now it'll actually move. It's not like a dead stick before 6,000 RPM now. It actually picks up really low range. It gets out of its own way. And now the exhaust. I didn't tell you guys the dyno, but the exhaust valve, we've opened it up, but we've also made some exceptions to that opening up. And I'll show you guys exactly what I'm talking about here. All right, I'm gonna show you guys to the best of my ability how this exhaust flap works. So right now it's closed. I'm gonna hit the front brake here, and all I'm gonna do is put it in first gear, which I've already done. Still closed. But I'm gonna let go of the clutch a little bit and engage. Now it's open. Oh, all right, that's open, closed, open, closed. So you guys can see what the difference is right there, and this will stay open until you get to about 2 miles per hour when you're coming to a stop with the clutch in. So you can see with that exhaust valve open up partially, meaning at neutral and at stop, the bike is completely quiet. It's nice when you start the bike up in the morning, or you roll the bike out into the garage in the morning and warm it up. You're not going to piss off a whole lot of neighbors with the bike anymore. I think it's a great feature, but if you want it open at all times, we can do that as well. This isn't something that's static, meaning it has to be this way. And for those of you that don't have exhaust valves, of course, that doesn't apply at all. Another thing that's noticeably smoother on this bike is going to be the tip-in and just overall feel while cruising. The bike isn't as jerky anymore. It feels more exact and precise. It's more confidence inspiring. And the reason for that is we actually dyno these bikes not just at wide open throttle, but also 25% throttle, 50% throttle, 75% throttle, so we can see exactly what the bike is doing and how the air fuel is reacting to the throttle percentage, and then we adjust it based on that with the modifications that we're doing, as well as the ignition timing changes. Overall, that means no more jerking, smoother ride, and we've also managed to get these fans lower. And I've noticed before we were cruising about 185 degrees on the freeway. Now we're low 180s, like 181, 183. So the bike is actually cooler while we're cruising as well, and it's going to be cooler all around also when you're top end stuff. So cooler engine means cooler oil means longer lasting oil means longer lasting engine. Just another thing we put into this, and the fan temps have been changed as well. We've opened that window up from that small little window it had. It's a wider window, and it activates earlier now. You'll also notice I have the bike in P5 right now instead of P1. And I know you're thinking like, hey, there's no power there. Well, we put power in all the modes. The only thing that changes is the throttle response now, or the tip in for every single mode. So if you're someone that wants to retain your modes, you can do that as well. We can allow that and retain it for the neutered, you know, P5, P4, P3. But right now, I'm showing you guys that P5 has all the power. The only thing that's changing is the throttle response, which is another thing that people complained about, which is how jerky the throttle is. The shifter feels more crisp now. There's no delay. I'm gonna try to go low here. Yeah, it had that big window before where it was kind of like almost like a half a second delay at lower RPMs. At higher RPMs it felt okay, but now it actually feels more sorted, and that can also be attributed to exacting the air fuel and ignition properly. That just makes everything all around smoother. So I'm really impressed with the way this bike is behaving stop and go. And I forgot to tell you guys in the dyno what our flashing procedure is for the motorcycle. I see a lot of people online that are talking about opening up the ECU, mailing ECUs in, gluing them together after they take them apart, like it's a giant mess. Our procedure is something we mail to your house, and all you're gonna do is plug into the onboard diagnostic port. It's a little red plug that's under the rider's seat here. So all you gotta do is remove the rider's seat. There's a little red plug there, you plug into it, and that's how you flash the bike. And you can do it all from your home. There's no need to remove your ECU. There's no downtime on your motorcycle. It's a very easy procedure, probably the easiest there is. So right now I'm heading over to the top end stuff, and we'll see exactly how it's improved beyond that 10,000 marker. All right, we're testing the top end now. And man, just getting the throttle right there. Oh man, this bike is a handful. There's so much more power in the mid-range now. I can't even stretch this thing out all the way. I mean, this is like a 8-foot-tall basketball player flying in coach. I feel like if I stretch the legs, I'm gonna hit something and it's gonna hurt. Man, there's so much power in this bike. I'm barely twisting the throttle too. First gear, there's so much more power in that mid and low range. It really helps coming out of these low speed turns. And the brakes, fantastic on this bike. They really help anchoring this thing down for me. Tip in, extremely good. Shifting, extremely good. No upsets and balance. Oh man. This is a changed bike. It feels like I have a second engine in that low and mid range. Alright, let's see what she's got here. I'm really pushed on her now. Oh man. This is scary fast. I can't even get all the throttle in it. That's all the throttle. I couldn't even wind it out. I'm running out of runway here. Man, the low speed transitions are really good. Really good. Oh, the braking's great. The engine braking is really good too. I didn't mention that before, but it's just exactly where it needs to be. The exhaust opening up so wide now, it's so nice. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Definitely need a section that has longer straightaways. Barely got a first gear with this bike. So much power. All right, now that we had our fun with the canyon stuff, let's go ahead and see what it does 60 through 130 and how it improved over that stock run. Here for the post flash 60 through 130, and I'm going to leave this in P5 to show you guys that we have full power in all modes. The only thing that changes is that throttle response. So let's do it. Let's test it right now. You guys saw it, that was a 4.5. So 4.5 60 through 130, and then 4.5 is much better than that 5.3 we saw on the stock run. We also tested the 100 through 150. The 100 through 150 was 4.6 versus a 6.2. So almost a second and a half faster there, and almost a full second faster from 60 to 130. Those are massive gains, and a lot of those gains that we saw, not only the top end, but you see that bottom end where the 60 through 130 stock curves up. And that's where we're talking about, where we're getting a lot of that low and mid-range power back with the flash. Something that really changed this bike, especially with the top end stuff we were doing. And I was coming out of corners, those low speed first gear corners. Getting in first gear feels a lot more lively now, and that's on P5. So I'm proving to everyone that we have complete control over the modes as well. So now I think it's time for a complete recap here with the flashing. So we got a lot more power across the entire range, more throttle response, better tip-in, cooler engine temps. We have an exhaust valve we have complete control of. We have the modes we have complete control of that give you options for actual throttle response through different modes. We also exact that air fuel and completely de-restrict the bike in ways that other tuners are not able to at the moment, because there's a whole bunch of new logic with the ECU, as I was talking about on the dyno. There's a lot more ways this bike is restricted than just one table. In my opinion, this bike has been completely changed with the flash end, not just with power like I've been saying over and over again, but overall rideability has been transformed. So a lot of tuners, like I've said, will get you that peak power number. This is overall rideability for track racers, for people that cruise the bike, for roll racers. We tune it for everything. Of course, if you change those sprockets up on the CBRs too much, the quick shifter stops working altogether, so we adjust for that. For tire sizing, there's a lot of adjustments we can make with the tuning, and we ask that in our questionnaire after you buy our product and it ships out to you. We ask a litany of questions, and one of them is the modifications, tire sizes, just for this specific instance, so we can maximize performance and rideability on your motorcycle. And not that it matters too much. I know people that buy this bike probably don't care about this factoid, but I've been checking the gas mileage, and we've been getting just the same, if not better gas mileage than stock. Now, always keep this in mind. When you de-restrict a motorcycle and you have a heavy hand, and now we're going to that territory where the bike was restricted formerly, we're getting more air, and guess what? More fuel. So if you have a heavy hand and you have a de-restricted bike, you're gonna burn more fuel when you get into that zone that was de-restricted. But as far as riding along, cruising, we're getting the same exact gas mileage, if not better than stock. So I think that's going to do it for our ride today. I really enjoyed getting on this bike, and if someone was going to ask me where do I put this bike on in the podium of bikes that I've done, because I've done so many of these bikes and I get these questions all the time. So as far as where I'd place this on the hierarchy here, it's my favorite Japanese bike. It's currently my favorite Japanese bike, and that's just out of a pure performance standpoint. This bike is insane, especially when it gets into its range where it's eating like 10,000 plus RPM. This thing is a absolute monster. Now, I'm not talking about aesthetics or anything like that, just how this rides and how it performs. It is a monster. In fact, I'm gonna hold my head down while I say this, but this will walk on a BMW S1000RR, let's say 25 to 25. This will skywalk it up top. Up top, this thing is walking away from a RR, and it really pains me to say that, because all around, the RR, the S1000RR is probably my favorite all-around bike. It's like the Swiss Army knife of bikes, does everything well, and the low and mid range is just so good because of that shift cam technology they've added to it, where we got all this torque, we got all this power, where a bike like this doesn't have that low to mid range at all. It's really suffering down low. But I think the Flash sorts it out, all my concerns and issues. And like I said, the quick shifter is even better than it was before as well. And people like to say it's smooth, people that just ride Japanese bikes. I still don't think this is up there on par with like a BMW, but the quick shifter still is very smooth, very good for a Japanese bike, 100%. So I think it's gonna do it for a ride review. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.